Hey there, and welcome back one more time to Together Again, a Lakes Funland story. After going through the game, I got inspired to try and cover the general story of the game, similar to what I did with The Return to Bloody Nights. Now, for this video, I'll be telling the story as if you are the main character, who is Ashley J. Waters. So, a lot of times I'll be referring to the character as you, as if you're the character. So, just want to keep that in mind. Of course, this video just has spoilers, unlike the game in general if you haven't seen it before, so spoiler warning. Also, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos on the game, here's a brief warning. Warning! This game contains lots of flashing lights, loud noises, non-graphic bloodshed, mild language, references to death and suicide, and of course, lots of staring eyes. With that said, let's get started. When you first start the game, introductory credits start to play, and along these credits, you have a few images that help sort of tell the story that leads up to the events of the game. Our first image shows a man in a business suit looking at what appears to be a monstrous entity in the darkness. The next image that's shown is the animatronic cast of Lakes Funland entertaining children. Afterwards, we see three crying children looking up at what appears to be a dark figure in a trench coat. And then finally, we see the main character, you, Ashley J. Waters, with her mother as they head to Lakes Funland. Now, our story begins in 1968, where a man by the name of Oscar Magwood is about to get voted out of his own company by the board of directors. As Oscar looks down at his desk, dreading what's to come, he hears a voice. As he looks to where the voice came from, he sees nothing, and calls out to whoever or whatever spoke to him. That's when the room darkens, and this monstrous entity appears. The entity seems to know a lot about Oscar, who's known as a robotics genius. He then offers Oscar to make him powerful and wealthy, but at a cost. The cost for this would be his son. While Oscar initially rejects this offer, the entity clarifies that he's not simply looking to kill his son or take his soul, but he is going to take something from his son. One day. A very ambiguous deal for sure. As the entity advises Oscar to think carefully, the screen cuts to black, unknown of what Oscar decides to do about this deal. Now we get to learn about you, Ashley J. Waters, who's doing an investigation as part of a high school project, an investigation that will end up changing your life permanently.
Greetings. This is Ashley J. Waters speaking, introducing you to my investigation thesis project for Mrs. Pillivan's class. For this special conclusive project, I've decided to put my dedication, my concentration, and all of my energy into one particular case. Could it be controversial? Yes. Delicate? Of course. Tragic? Unfortunately. On October 11th, 1990, Martin Calcott, Joshua Felwick, and Wendy Gribble disappeared at night under mysterious circumstances after they had left their homes without prior notice. The three of them, presumably at the same hour, headed to unknown whereabouts, never to be seen again. I, Ashley Waters, compromised to do everything that is in my power to unveil the secret behind their disappearances, one way or the other. Over and out.
Welcome to your first night at Lakes Funland. The phone guy in this story is none other than your mom, who will be leaving recorded messages every night for you. How lovely. The first phone call is used to explain some of the game's mechanics overall, such as the cameras, the vents, flashlight, panic, and also is used to explain Hayden's mechanics, who is the only active animatronic at this time. As your mom explains the game's mechanics, she explains that the animatronics do move around at night, probably because they weren't designed with a night mode. How odd, I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. Though I'd say that's not the most concerning thing about these animatronics.
There was this other girl, too, but she chose to quit because one of the animatronics got into the office during her shift and tried to attack her. She left the building with a broken leg. We were really lucky she didn't sue us.
To think we have actual documentation of bodily injury because of these animatronics, and yet we, a high school student, is still here during the night shift. After that news, this pretty much concludes the main parts of the phone call. Nothing else is really revealed story-wise or mechanics-wise. That's pretty much the gist of it. Now, of course, you go through the course of the main night, get to 7 a.m. And when you finish the night, you get a cutscene, or kind of like a mini game, I guess, but I'm trying to differentiate cutscenes and mini games. So, cutscene being that you're just talking. Now, in this cutscene, you, Ashley, go around asking people about the three missing children that disappeared 4 years ago. This is the center of your investigation. This is what your high school project is all about. Now, depending on who you talk to throughout this cutscene, you can either get or miss out on some key information regarding to the events that led to these kids' disappearance. First off, you can learn that one of the children, Wendy Gribble, was excited the day she had went missing after she recently visited Lakes Funland earlier in the day. And just to keep note, it's common knowledge that the three kids went missing on the same day at nighttime. We also have a surprise guest by the name of Cawthon, who tells you that Martin's parents suspected that Martin may have gone back to Lakes Funland, and it's also mentioned that Martin's brother recalled seeing Martin speaking to someone unknown, and afterwards, Martin was anxious for the entire day. Now, your final conversation, the conversation that ends this cutscene, is with a retired police detective named Darren, who offers to help you with your investigation. And once you trade contact information with him, the cutscene ends. Now, there isn't much that happens on night 2 aside from the introduction of three new animatronics by the names of Alice, Alex, and John Kun. Now, of course, you learn their mechanics, you go through the night again, easy peasy. Now, after night 2, we get another cutscene where you are speaking with Darren at his home. You meet his wife and their daughter Jane. As you and Jane talk, you remember an old friend you used to have that goes by the name of Harlan. Despite the good memories, things weren't so easy for Harlan. Harlan had lost his sister via kidnapping, and a few months afterwards, he also lost his mother due to a car crash. All you remember is that Harlan and his father were like family to you and your mom. Now, Night Three's phone call is mainly dedicated to Lake this time, as he's the new active animatronic. And it's worth mentioning that in this phone call, your mom actually sounds a lot more worried compared to the first two nights.
I, I mean, uh, maybe you can just leave your office for a while and, play in the arcade zone for a few minutes.
I think it's safe to say that, considering the events of the first two nights with the animatronics, there'd be a little bit of concern, especially considering what these animatronics have done in the past. Now, of course, once you finish up night 3 again, business as usual, you get another cutscene where you discuss the missing children's investigation with Darren. Now, you mentioned that based on what you learned from the park, all three children went to Lakes Funland on the morning of the same day that they went missing. You start to speculate that whoever spoke with Martin on that morning was probably in an employee only area, which is why no one knows who they were. And then you say, if the children were persuaded to go back there that night when it closed, it means only someone with access to the location at any time could have done something to them, such as the owner of Lakes Funland, for example. Darren, however, isn't so sure that the owner would be responsible. Now, the owner of Lakes Funland goes by the name of Oscar Magwood. Finally, you mention a separate incident where a girl named Lorraine Wilson was murdered in the back alley of Lakes Funland, though there's no clear indication if these two incidents are connected. No matter how you spin it, something's off with that place, and you were going to get answers. Which explains why you ended up working at Lakes Funland at some point in the future after that talk with Darren. Now, instead of going on to night 4, we actually get another cutscene where a girl is being chased by a figure in a large dark coat and hat, leaving behind what appears to be bloody footprints. The player, you, are Hayden, and you follow the figure and the girl to the arcade room to find a little girl lying in a puddle of blood on the floor, with the dark figure standing beside her, who then turns around and deactivates you. Very ominous for sure. At this point, it'd be easy to speculate that this girl could be one of the missing children 4 years ago. Now, Night's 4 phone call is dedicated to explaining Chick's mechanics, the red chicken who is the final active animatronic. And your mom advises you to stop looking into the missing children investigation and starts to sound even more concerned compared to Night 3, and even suggests other investigations that you could focus on that aren't as grim.
You know, that investigation you're doing for school about the missing children and their possible connection to Lorraine's assassination. I mean, you're doing great. It's just. Just that I don't think you'll get anywhere with it. Plenty of interesting cases you can work on. What about the robberies at the Red Path Museum? Listen, I just think it may not be safe to do an investigation on such a serious case.
Now, one thing I wanted to mention that happened on this night specifically, though is not guaranteed to happen on night 4, is that an animatronic with the appearance of a girl in orange clothing appeared in my office, and after a few seconds, you're greeted with this jump scare. Before the night restarts, back in your office like nothing happened. Now, someone has commented on one of my videos previously that they got this jump scare on the first night. So it seems to be one of those instances where it can happen on any night. It's one of those rare events. But I figured that since it happened for me on night 4, I'd mention it at this point in the storyline. We'll talk more about this character later, though it should be made clear that this character is not part of the cast of Lakes Funland. You don't see this animatronic at all on stage. You've never seen them before. Now, of course, night 4 goes on. You get to 7 a.m. New cutscene, which shows another conversation between you and Jane. And when Jane asks more about Harlan, you start thinking about how you haven't heard from Harlan in the past 4 years. That's when we get another cutscene revealing what's happened to Harlan. It's revealed that Harlan decided to commit suicide and afterwards was surrounded in darkness. And it's at this point when Harlan meets the same entity that Oscar Magwood met, who's apparently been waiting for Harlan for a while now based on the dialogue that he has with Harlan. As they talk, the entity offers Harlan a deal, or rather a choice, to have a happy family, the chance to be loved, to be stronger, never in pain, to feel nothing ever again. A lot of promises. And as the entity says this, Harlan starts undergoing a transformation, suggesting that he actually accepted the entity's offer immediately. Of course, with all that done, we approach night 5. We're getting closer to the end of the week, and your mom apologizes to you for the troubles recently and understands if you don't want to come back next week.
Ashley, look, I'm really sorry for all the inconvenience and the troubles I've put you through. And if you don't want to return next week, I can totally understand that. I'm so sorry, honey.
Now, after you complete night 5, you get another cutscene where you see Oscar Magwood in his office complaining about threats, accusations, and his family being targeted. More trouble yet again, and he realizes that the only choice he has is to call on the entity once again. What's interesting about this cutscene is that at one point, when he calls on the entity, he says, "I need you in here, you've got my animatronic's body," suggesting that the entity now has a physical form. He is no longer just this thing in the darkness, but now possesses a physical body. However, there's no indication of what body he has. Or is there? The entity appears yet again, realizing that Oscar is seeking help yet again, and offers protection for his family under one condition. Oscar must deliver the souls, blood, and lives of 5 children. Despite Oscar's initial shock at the request, he ends up agreeing. That's when the scene changes to the outside of Lakes Funland, where a little girl is looking through the window as a cloaked figure approaches from behind, and everything fades to black until we see the little girl lying on the ground outside, with Chick staring directly through the window. Considering the knowledge that we've gathered up to this point, it seems that the girl in this alley is Lorraine Wilson, the girl who was murdered in the back alley of Lakes Funland. And now we've reached night 6, the end of your shift for the week. And it's at this point where your story can go in 2 different directions, as far as I'm aware. Option A is to just play through night 6 as you played. You go through the 6 nights, you don't do anything extra. You get a paycheck at the end of night 6, and that's the end. Nothing else. However, you'll notice that when you go back to revisit the nights, the finale night is the one night that remains unavailable to you, which means that getting this neutral ending, as the game puts it, is not the path to get that finale night. Option B, however, requires a bit more effort. Now, of course, you can always revisit the nights, and on nights 3, 4, and 5 specifically, you'll notice some objects appearing on camera that aren't always there. Now, when you interact with them, some of these will be collectibles that don't do anything, but others will cause an arcade minigame to pop up. And as you play through these minigames, you'll start to see some glitches. Now, if you interact with these glitches, a new minigame will open up where you have to essentially navigate around until you find a child. And when you talk to this child or interact with this child, the text, "You must not cry anymore, my child. You don't have to be alone anymore. Now take my hand and come along with me." Once you get through this part, the night restarts. And if you leave that night, you get a notification saying, for example, "Wendy is safe now." There are 3 minigames in total, one for each of the missing children. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned is that among all 3 minigames, you can find a smiling shadow figure of a girl with pigtails. A very familiar design. Now, once you've saved all 3 children in nights 3, 4, and 5, you can then complete night 6 normally. Now, on your final day, night 6, you receive a phone call, but it's not from your mom this time. It's from Michael, the day shift guard. He's been trying to reach your mother, but never was able to. And of course, you and your dad haven't seen her all day either.
I'm Mike Schmidt, the day shift guard, but I haven't seen her the entire day, and I'm assuming she didn't pick you up either. I'm really worried. I tried calling her and everything, but I got no answers.
Michael hasn't seen her either. She's never missed a day at work, and Dad hasn't heard a single thing about her all day either.
Aside from your mother's odd disappearance, something's off. As you continue your shift, you notice that Chick is the only inactive animatronic throughout the night. Very odd considering that she was the most recent animatronic to be active, and now, no activity. I initially passed it off as a bug. I thought I got lucky. One less character to deal with, right? However, towards the end of the night, Chick starts moving. You realize the audio lures aren't working. She appears in your office, and then black. You wake up surrounded by darkness, unsure of what just happened. You weren't attacked, so you can't be dead. Suddenly, someone speaks to you, and then you recognize her from the newspaper, Lorraine Wilson, the girl who was murdered in the back alley of Lake's Funland. Lorraine explains that you're okay, you're just in a trance, and reveals that all of them are here, the missing children, and that the answers behind this entire investigation are here. Lorraine apologizes to you because you want the truth behind the disappearances. You want to know who's responsible. The truth is, the one responsible is your mother. In denial, you refuse to believe Lorraine, for Lorraine says that there's something wrong with them, something dark controlling them from within. But she understands the regret your mother has, how much your mother wanted to free all of them. She knows that your mother did the things that she did to protect you from the man who made her do this, from the man who made her commit these atrocities. Now all you have to do, in order to free them, is to come back for one more night. Now that's quite the revelation, and a lot in general to say the least. And on your final day, you start off in absolute denial about what you learned.
No. It was Mom? My mom in all these years, and it was her? No, this fucking can't be.
And as you complete your final shift, you give your goodbyes to the children and burn the place down.
Alright, boys. You're all going back home. Good riddance.
You wonder if it's all over until you hear Lorraine behind you, and she's not alone. The 3 missing children are there too. You did it. You put their spirits to rest and freed them. Then each child disappears after forgiving what your mother had done. Before leaving, Lorraine tells you to never forget how much your mother loved you. and then she forgives her as well. After they all leave, you hear someone else. It's Harlan, crying on the floor. As you recognize him, he asks, "Why did you do it? We could have had everything. We could have been safe, without pain or worry." You apologize to Harlan, telling him that this isn't right. He needs to free himself. However, Harlan's convinced he has nobody else, until you remind him of his family, his mother and sister waiting for him, and Ashley offers him a choice: either stay here or free yourself. For that, you remind him that he's your best friend, and Harlan says the same to you. Finally, you say goodbye to Harlan, and then the credits roll. And there you have it, a story filled with sadness as you learn of the horrors that your mother committed, all for a high school project. Now, yes, that's a very gross way of simplifying it. Very easy to just say, "Oh yeah, your mother killed kids and you had to learn it for a high school project." Obviously, that's not really the only thing in this story, but it is pretty much the most impactful thing for, I imagine, you, the character, Ashley. Now that you've finished all 7 nights, you have access to the extras, which can be used to view, aside from all the normal extra stuff, right, with jump scares and animatronics, you get to look at the collectibles that you've gotten. And that includes audio tapes that can be gathered each night from nights 1 to night 6 in order to learn more about Rachel, who's Ashley's mother, your mother. These audio tapes pretty much document Rachel's state of mind ever since she killed the 4 children. And for the most part, I'm not going to go over the tapes here. I already made a video on that. I'll leave it linked below if you want to hear the audio tapes throughout. To put a TLDR on the audio tapes, she pretty much starts off as a heavy alcoholic with depression and apparently saw a vision that showed her how to save the children. She just needed someone who can connect with the children in order to be able to save them. You see where I'm going with this? And of course, the final audio tape is for you.
Today is November 18th, and this is probably the last tape I'll record. And it's just for you, Ashley. I won't be around today, nor tomorrow, nor for a long time. I'm aware that nothing will ever make up for what I did, and that there are not enough words to tell you how sorry I am for doing this, for hiding it, and for letting you take this into your hands. I know I'm a horrible person, and that nothing justifies my actions. I was scared, terrified that something would happen to you, or your father, if I didn't do as I was told. I didn't know what to do, and all that panic, all that fear, my brain just stopped working, and I did it. Ashley, I'm sorry about everything. Martin, Josh, Wendy, and Lorraine, I'm sorry about everything. I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. I know you'll never go back home, but the least I can do for you is give you the rest you deserve. A closure once and for all. Goodbye.
It's a bit chilling thinking about the events that led up to this point, even if it's visualized through Atari style or 8-bit mini games, right? Because it's not the most visually impacting, not always, but just the context of it. Your mom killed 4 children in order to protect you. It's a chilling thing to imagine, right? And even after all the tapes, right, learning how your mom has coped with these events, right? There is still one more thing. Once you've beaten all the nights, there is a secret minigame accessible from the main menu. Now, I didn't do this myself because my game was a bit bugged where I don't have access to night 7, even though I beat night 7. So, I can't vouch that this is exactly how to do it, but I believe this is how you do it because I saw it in a video. When you beat all 7 nights, you have 3 badges in the main menu screen. And I believe you need to interact with each of those badges. And once you interact with those badges, you see a new figure on the right side of your screen where they normally show the images for the section that you're highlighting. And after that, a minigame opens up, which shows Rachel revisiting key events of her life, from elementary school to the death of her mother, graduation, employment, and a specific event where Oscar Magwood, her boss, is seemingly aggressive to her as she's pretty much sobbing in tears. Now, this is probably when Oscar actually threatens her family. After this, we see Rachel crying on the ground as the three missing children are lying dead, covered in blood on the ground. After this, we see Rachel crying in the shower after what she had done. A very sad story for all those involved, with a bit of a bittersweet ending, especially for you. I mean, you made it out alive, you freed the children, right? But there's still some things that are unresolved, and at the end of the day, you learned that your mom committed horrible atrocities. Now, that's pretty much all of the factual information that this game gives you, unless I missed anything. The major question I have is, what happened to the entity? We never see any conclusion with that character, and they pretty much get away scot-free. Now, something that I didn't explicitly mention was that during the cutscene where the entity offers Oscar's family protection in exchange for the 5 children, was that the entity is supposedly starting his own project, similar to like entrepreneurship as he calls it, which is why he needed the 5 children. But there isn't much information on this project aside from that one mention, so we're left to assume that the entity pretty much went off to work on that project. Now, Theoryland we go. And now we're in Theoryland, mainly talking about the girl animatronic with orange clothing that appeared in Night 4. Now, I believe this is the physical manifestation of the entity. For one, the rare death screen that you get with this animatronic shows the face of the animatronic with the word guilty written in black. This, I think, could be saying, for example, that the entity is the one guilty for all of this. They're the ones who made a deal. They're the ones who wanted the souls of the 5 children. They're the reason why all this has come to pass. That's what I think the whole guilty is supposed to mean. That's the most clear interpretation for me. Part of this is also backed up by the fact that we know from Oscar and the entity's dialogue that the entity does have a physical body now in the form of an animatronic. It should also be mentioned that at the point where we see that cutscene, the entity has had an animatronic body for a few years now. And for me, the final nail in the coffin for this is the fact that in all 3 minigames, you see the same figure as the animatronic in your office. A girl with pigtails and a skirt, and in 2 of those minigames, they show a grin, pretty much like the animatronic in your office, with a grin, pigtails, skirt. And considering that the animatronic is present in all 3 minigames, I think that this is representing the entity who has been responsible for all of these children's deaths. Especially when you consider that for every minigame, when you interact with a child, you get the same dialogue. You must not cry anymore, my child. You don't have to be alone anymore. Now take my hand and come along with me. Being part of this family that the entity has created, with Harlan being the last member. And that is pretty much everything I managed to put together for this game, from the factual stuff to a little bit of theorizing. And overall, I found myself enjoying this game a lot, not just from the gameplay aspect, but from the story aspect as well. And overall, it was just a fun ride. Now, I'm very glad that this game went as well as it did, because one of the first fan games that I started following when I made a GameJolt account and when I started making content on FNAF fan games back in the beginning of 2022. I am curious to see if they plan on continuing the entity story. It seems like they could. There's definitely the possibility. But either way, I'm glad to, finally get through the entire story. And I hope you enjoyed me kind of laying out the story as best I could. A lot of people seem to have enjoyed me doing that for the Return to Bloody Nights. And I got inspired to do that for this game as well. And I would definitely like to do this more often than not. I'm already planning on doing this for Jolly, but that's way later on when Jolly 4 actually comes out. But I'd like to do this again for sure. And with that said, I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Lets me know you're enjoying the content and want to see more of it, especially these kinds of videos. But these are, again, going to be a lot more rare than what I normally post. Great job to the developers again. Here are the credits. Great job. Really enjoyed it. The game in the description below as always. And with that said, I hope to see you in another video. Take care.